Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that there does not have to be a recession. I have not watched this video. I want to watch it with you guys. Make sure y'all hit a like for the algorithm. Let's get into it. I love it. And he was on NBC, and he had pulled up on CNN. But I want to get the most recent interview because I like this guy, and I think that he's incredibly smart.
And joining me now is Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Secretary Bessent, welcome back to Meet the Press.
It's good to see you.
It's great to have you back after a very big week. Let's start with the market reaction to President Trump's announcement of his tariffs. As I just laid out at the top of the program, the markets lost more than $6 trillion in value. Was this disruption always part of the plan, Mr. Secretary?
Look, Chris, markets are organic. The animals, and you never know what the reaction is going to be. One thing that I can tell you as the Treasury Secretary, what I've been very impressed with is the market infrastructure, that we had record volume on Friday, and everything is working very smoothly, so the American people can be very take great comfort in that. And in terms of the market reaction, look, we get these short-term market reactions from time to time. The market consistently underestimates Donald Trump. I remember that in 2016, the night President Trump won, the market crashed. And it turned out he was going to be the most pro-business president in over a century, maybe in the history of the country. And we went on to very high after inflation returns for the next 4 years.
So if you did not capitalize in 2016, and I just mentioned that, I literally just said that. I said, listen, I'm old enough to pay attention to what happened in 2008, 2000.com bubble burst, 2016, 2020. And you know what's so crazy about it? You usually don't get it this often. You don't get these cyclical opportunities to take advantage of what's happening in the market this often. That's just the honest to God truth. You don't get it this close, right? Like usually you get it further apart. You get it every 16 years. You get it every 20 years. You may have a blip within an 8 to 10 year span. You don't get this opportunity this often. But if you were a person that took advantage of what happened in 2016, because guess what they said? The sky is falling. The sky is falling. And we ran it up and we got richer. At that time, we got richer than we ever had before. At the end of Trump's term, and this is a fact, and I documented it on my channel, on the Anton Daniels channel, in 2019 is when I retired from corporate America the first time, got out of the business, made sure that I stayed consistent, upgraded my season tickets, and I was ready to retire for the rest of my life because we had truly been in a great position to capitalize off of what was going on in the market and also what happened in real estate over the last 10 years prior before that. Everybody, listen, the same people that were saying eggs is too high, now they ain't got nothing to say, is the same ones that's going to say, oh my God, look at the market is crashing. United States of America literally is too big to fail. If you don't think that this is going to be a roller coaster, and if you don't get it, then you lost it.
Well, but this was the biggest two-day crash since the pandemic. The president on Saturday.
Somebody said, Anton, how soon do you think we'll start to see a market recovery? I think it's going to be a long-term play. I think you're going to see this. It's not going to be like this. It's going to be just like this. It's going to be some ebbs and some flows, and it's going to slowly do like this. And then by the end of in 2028, we're going to see who the winners are.
Urging people, quote, to hang tough, saying it won't be easy. And I guess the big question on people's minds, Mr. Secretary, how difficult is it going to be? And how long are Americans going to have to hang tough?
Well, I reject that assumption. There doesn't have to be a recession. Who knows how the market is going to react in a day, in a week. What we are looking at is building the long-term economic fundamentals for prosperity that I think the previous administration had put us on a course toward
long-term
financial
play.
calamity.
But it's just in terms of the uncertainty, I think, that people are feeling and seeing. And President Trump saying he wants people to hang tough, acknowledging there's going to be what he has described as a short period of pain. Can you help provide some clarity for folks? How long will this period
He's asking
of
the same
uncertainty
question
be?
over
Are we
and
talking
over
about
again.
weeks? Are we talking about months? Are we talking about years?
Can't predict the market.
This is an adjustment process. What we saw with President Reagan when he brought down the great inflation and we got past the Carter malaise, that there was some choppiness at that time, but he held the course, and we're going to hold the course. And this has been years in the building, years in the making. This unsustainable system, our trading partners have taken advantage of us. We can see that through the large surpluses. We can see this through the large budget deficits.
Yep.
And also, Chris, this is a national security problem, which we saw during COVID. We saw during COVID that optimal supply chains are not resilient. And what I could say is the only good outcome from COVID is it was a beta test for what would happen if our supply chains got broken. And President Trump has decided that we cannot be at risk like that for our crucial medicines, for semiconductors, for shipping, and we are going to move forward. So
basically what he's saying is that if anything ever happens, you get another pandemic, you get into a war, another country don't necessarily like you, we are too dependent on other countries in order for us to survive or operate in our best case scenario situation. If we have a problem, our supply chains, our infrastructure, everything is dependent on other people because we put profits, short-term profits, over what was best for America long-term. That then forces us to then acquiesce over to other countries and give them better deals, even at the behest, even at the demise of America. Why? Because we want to maintain a relationship because they give us cheap medicine. We want to maintain relationships because they are now the world's #1 steel producer, and they're exporting more in the United States of America than we're exporting, and we don't even make anything inside of the United States of America anymore. It is a national security risk. When they say it's a national security risk for us to be in this position, that is what they mean. We can't be dependent on other countries for the things that's best for America. It's a nice to have as a supplement, but it should not be a requirement for our survival. It should not be a requirement for us to be able to make sure that we're taken care of as far as if a war or a pandemic was to ever happen. And we experienced it during the 2020 pandemic. We seen it. And that's why all of y'all was running out there to buy toilet paper and what else was they buying? Hand sanitizer. Y'all was buying toilet paper and hand sanitizer.
the American people can know that they are going to have a more secure.
People saying jobs ain't coming. Y'all so evil and cynical. Jobs ain't coming back. Jobs ain't gonna come back. So evil. No, you just lazy. You're just lazy because you don't even know how to work with your hands no more. You don't know how to change a tire. So you couldn't imagine a possibility of actually going to get a real job to do something to better your family. That's the problem. You can't imagine actually doing manual labor as a man. Man, jobs ain't coming. Man, get out the goddamn call center and go and do something. You want to sit in the call center with the ladies for the rest of your life. You can't imagine actually doing something with your hands that's going to generate more revenue for your family. Man, my feet hurt. I've been standing up too long. Get out the call center, fatso. Just keep on eating lunch every day. But I want to go out to lunch with my coworkers. I don't want to get dirty. Jobs ain't coming back. Nah, it's plenty of jobs. You just lazy, bigums. Go get you a job. There's plenty of them hiring out here. It's just not the ones that you, man, that's why I went to school for underwater basket weaving degrees. That's why I went to school to go African American studies, because I don't want to do that. Get up. Get up. Get your big, lazy behind up and go and do something that actually is productive for other people.
future.
And yet, President Trump.
Hello. Thank you for calling Rent a Center, where we rent to everything that everybody wants at any time, and we can get you your stuff. How you doing, ma'am? No. Want to see a manager? Get up.
Promised that he was going to improve the economy starting on day one. He said prices are going to come down. More than 160 million Americans, Mr. Secretary, as you know, are invested in the market. Many of them have spent their lives saving for their retirement. What is your message to Americans who want to retire right now and who've just seen their lifetime savings drop significantly?
Well, Kristen, I think that's a false narrative. Americans who want to retire right now, the Americans who have put away for years in their savings accounts, I think they don't look at the day-to-day fluctuations of what's happening. And, in fact, most Americans don't have everything in the market. Most Americans in a 401k have what's called a 60-40 account. That is 60 of 40 accounts that are down 5 or 6% on the year. People have a long-term view. They have a program. That the reason the stock market is considered a good investment is because it's a long-term investment. If you look day to day,
it's not
week
supposed
to
to be
week,
short term.
it's very risky. Over the long term, it's a good investment.
President Trump's tariffs are being described as the biggest tax hike on Americans in decades. They could cost the average household thousands of dollars. Republican Senator Ted Cruz had this to say. I'm going to play it. Get your reaction on the other side.
Soundbite.
Tariffs are a tax on consumers, and I'm not a fan of jacking up taxes on American consumers.
Do you
see why they only play 3 seconds, but they don't play the full context? Now, I don't have the time, obviously, because I want to make sure that I continue to get through the show to show you everything that Ted Cruz actually says. And just because he says that he's not a big fan of it doesn't mean that we don't necessarily have to go through it in order to make sure that we settle and we get real, all right, a real trade deficit defeated, and make sure that the rest of these companies are not, and these countries are not taking advantage of American taxpayer citizens. But I want to see how Scott addresses it.
That President Trump's tariffs will cause prices to go up on a range of goods.
Well, Kristen, what I like is data. And if we look at data from President Trump's first term, and there's a big study that just came out from a group of economists, mostly at MIT, that showed that a 20% tariff on China led to a 0.7% tax or price level increase over 4 years. I think that's pretty good. If we can take in 20% in tariffs and it's a 0.7% increase. And Kristen, the little publicized story this week, everyone wants to look at the stock market going down.
Which will go away next week.
Oil prices went down almost 15% in 2 days, which impacts working Americans.
So nobody wanted to talk about that. Oil prices, gas prices. Let me give you all a little bit of insight on what's really happening, okay? Some people really don't understand a long game, the long play, and I've explained it a little bit, but I'm not going to deep dive into it as much. So when you have situations like this happen, especially a disruption in the market, especially when it comes to a dip in the economy, so on and so forth, as far as how people are benefiting short term or long term, what happens is they tend to do things like lower prices, lower interest rates. I've seen automakers, Nissan, Ford, Toyota, have all said that they're dropping the prices on their vehicles because they can afford to do so versus their competitors, because they make the majority of their vehicles inside of the United States of America. What happens when you lower interest rates is you get better credit card rates. You get lower rates on homes, which also stimulates the economy because it encourages people to have a rotation, buyers and sellers. People then can afford to move, more importantly. But here's the biggest play. The United States of America has $36 trillion in debt. $37 trillion in debt. What happens is we also pay a lower rate on the interest of that debt, which then continues to contribute into whether or not we're operating at a budget surplus or a budget deficit. When you lower rates, which is what is about to start happening, and I'm not going to deep dive too much into this. When you're lowering rates because of what has happened in the economy, that means the United States of America effectively pays less on the interest in what we're basically incurring on a yearly basis, on an annual basis of $1 to $2 trillion. But MSNBC and CNN and all of these places, they're not going to have that conversation with you. They're not going to tell you that we are now going to be effectively paying a lower interest rate on the debt that we already service. When interest rates continue to explode under the Biden administration, why? Because they didn't have policies in place and they didn't know how to control inflation. And so they artificially raised interest rates in order to try to what? Have that short-term pain so that they can lower inflation because it was spiraling out of control. And at some points, it was above 10 and 12%, depending on where you lived in the United States of America. What it also did was it increased the amount that we were paying in interest on a debt that we were already servicing as a nation. And the individual governments, which also lowered the credit rating of places like Chicago because they couldn't afford to continue to survive and pay the interest rates that they were paying on the debt that they were servicing. So Chicago, while they were trying to raise property taxes on you guys and lay people off and everybody started to protest, part of the thing that they couldn't tell you, because Brandon Johnson is a school teacher and he needed people to explain it to him because he didn't understand exactly how local politics work, was that they were paying more to service the debt. And now that their credit rating got lowered, they're paying even more. The United States of America actually saves money, while at the same time, it's a buying opportunity for the people that really want to capitalize off of the market.
Much more than the stock market does. Interest rates hit their low for the year, so I'm expecting the mortgage applications to pick up.
Well, I know I am, FAFO. I know they're not going to appreciate me until I decide that I don't want to do any more live streaming. People are not going to appreciate the level of information that I'm giving you guys on this Millionaire Morning Show, which in my opinion, and which a lot of people's opinion, it is the greatest show on the face of the earth. Listen, we can talk about the surface level stuff. We can talk about DMP. We can talk about people pissed off. There's plenty of stories. I can go and review Shannon Sharp's interview with Damon Wayans about how he cheated on his wife. Or we can have some meaningful discussion and debate and differences of opinion on things that is really going to affect your life in real life every single day. People are not going to appreciate it until it's over. They're not going to appreciate it until I decide, you know what? I've had enough and the time is up.
So, I mean, during President Trump's first terms, the cost to Americans was nearly $80 billion in new taxes due to his tariffs. Prices did go up on everything from washing machines to tires.
Well, no. But let's go back. The aggregate number was 0.7, so we can discern the individual things. Also, households saw real net wages go up. So if wages go up faster than prices, which is not what happened over the past 4 years, that's why the bottom 50% got eviscerated.
Well, let me ask you about your view, because last January you wrote that, quote, tariffs are inflationary. The Fed chair said the same thing on Friday, that tariffs announced this week cause higher inflation. Have you expressed any concerns to President Trump directly that his tariff policy could be inflationary? No,
what I've said is tariffs are a one-time price adjustment. So there's a big difference between insipid endemic inflation within the system and consistent price level increases and a one-time adjustment. But the other thing that we're doing is we are raising wages for working Americans. We're bringing down regulation. So there are estimates that regulations have cost the average household about $8,000, that when we get the tax bill through, then we will make the tax levels permanent. And again, the drop in the energy prices, the drop in interest cost.
Scott, they don't want to talk about all of that.
I think real after-tax wages are going to go up for Americans, and that's what's important.
So make sure y'all hit a like for the algorithm, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications. Scott Bessent, ladies and gentlemen, explaining And I like these little boring nerd guys because they have a lot of insight and they can really give you more context. People don't like that. They like headlines. They don't like the fact that their true cost of living is going down, that their wages is growing up, wage growth is growing up, opportunities and jobs is going up. And if you create jobs and people are not necessarily taking advantage of them, what does it do? It creates more demand, or it creates more demand to where people then have to make sure that the wages go up in order for them to recruit the people to do the jobs that they want them to do.